Good evening, everyone. This is the Puyallup City Council meeting for October 29th. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for that. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Dorr?
Present.
Councilmember Adler?
Present.
Councilmember Johnson?
Excused.
Councilmember Whitting?
I'm here.
Councilmember Gilliam?
Present.
Deputy Mayor King?
Present.
Mayor Kaskema?
Present. At this time, I'd like to just ask if there are any high school students in the audience. Hi there, young lady. We'd like to acknowledge the youth of the community who are here for these meetings. You are the future leader of this community, and we'd like to welcome you. If you'd like to stand and introduce yourself and tell us which school you attend, that would be excellent.
Of course. Okay, so my name's Chloe Davis. I'm currently attending Rogers High School as a senior.
Excellent. What brings you here this evening?
So right now I'm doing a project in my civics class where we have to attend a political event. So that can be either attending our school district meetings or city council meetings, and there's a few options, but this one interested me the most.
Okay, well, thank you for being here this evening, and feel free after the meeting, if you decide to stay for the entire meeting, feel free to go up to any council member you'd like, and I'm sure that they'll gladly share with you their experience here. Again, thank you for being here. With that, I'd like to go to item number 1, approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, let's move on to item number 2, consideration of minutes. Item 2A is approval of the October 8th, 2024 budget sessions minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, I'm going to skip on to item number 4, and I will come back with presentations and proclamations. But first, let's move on to citizen comments. A little out of order, but I'm going to hand the gavel to my deputy mayor. He is going to handle citizen comments. Frankly, I've got to go get the proclamation, so let's go ahead and proceed with public comments. I'll be right back.
All right. Clerk, will you read the rules for citizens' comments, please?
This part of the meeting is for general citizen comments. Please reserve any public hearing testimony to that section of the agenda. The mayor will call on those who have provided their names in advance. Then the mayor will call for other citizens who wish to speak. For the record, please state your name and address, or city council district in which you reside. Please direct your comments to the council as a whole, not individual council members. All comments are limited to 3 minutes. The clerk will provide verbal notice when only 30 seconds remain. As a reminder, this portion of the meeting is council's opportunity to hear from the community and not a time to engage in debate. Lastly, per state law, this public comment period cannot be used to speak in support of or in opposition to a ballot measure or individual candidacy, and no such comments will be allowed.
All right. We will have the one and only John Hopkins make your way up to the front, please.
What an introduction. John Hopkins, District 1. My question is, whatever happened to the citizen comments? Where are the speakers? There are so few of them. And my question is, why is that the case? One of your colleagues said it's because everyone's happy. Well, I think it's more, I hate to say this, more of a blissful ignorance. There's a lack of information out there. And a good chunk of it is because of the groups have gone. Whatever happened to the Homeless Coalition? You know, Ted Brackman died. They haven't come back. Clean Up Puyallup, haven't seen them. And then there's the old watchdogs. You know, remember Gene Landry, how he'd get so upset about the 3% increase in just the water bill, nothing else. Now we have a significantly more than that. And property tax, he got upset about that, about a 1% increase, which doesn't even keep up with inflation. What would he have to say about the transportation benefit district? I think part of it we can also blame on the demise of newspapers. You know, the Pierce County Herald, I don't think does that even exist? And the News Tribune, who reads that? You know, it's down to just a few pages. It's just not worth the money. Personally, I've gone to the Seattle Times, but that doesn't cover this area at all. So we're short of information. Now, the city has done a few good things, like this little flyer on the comprehensive plan changes. I certainly appreciate that. That's good. But there's a lot of difference between what the city is putting out than as compared to objective reporting in the newspaper. So there's a general lack of information out there. And I'm not saying things are bad or that you're performing badly or any of that. In fact, the transportation district, I kind of like the idea. You know, we really need some help on the roads. That's good. I hope you don't use it to supplant the existing budget.
30 seconds.
You know, and as far as that sales tax on it, you know, it's kind of meaningless. It's kind of a regressive tax, actually. It really doesn't affect me. I give away a hell of a lot more money than that 0.1 of 1% or whatever it is. So anyway, I'm just saying blissful ignorance. It's not that everyone is happy. They just don't know. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hopkins. I appreciate your comments. Let's move on to Kelly. Is it Loney?
Yes, it is. Thank you. Most people say Looney the first time. My name is Kelly Loney, and by day I work for Tractor Supply in disaster recovery, but I'm also an artist and have been forever. And I'm here for two reasons. One is to thank the council and the Arts Commission for continuing to support the Signal Box art program. I love seeing them, but also I was one of the first artists to get accepted in 2020. And when COVID hit, I went into a slump. I didn't want to do any art. Puyallup had a Signal Box call for artists, and I was like, oh, that sounds like fun. So anyways, I tried it, and I got into digital art because of that, because of the large format. Digital works better, it stays sharp. And since then, I've now got Signal Boxes in Kent and Auburn and Lakewood and Fife and Pierce County, a total of 9, and I think 5 more on the way. I've got an alley in Puyallup that's going to have art put up, and right now they're installing art on a building on Pacific Avenue in Tacoma that I created digitally. So it's been awesome for me personally. I just want to thank you, first of all, for starting the program and also for continuing to support it and do new calls each year to put more art out there. The second thing is I do like to attend selection meetings. So when the arts commissions in the different cities and districts have a meeting where they're going to select the art, I like to sit in because I learn what they want and what they like and why they don't pick art or do pick art. It helps me submit better art the next time. So anyways, I sat in the Arts Commission meeting when they were selecting this latest round, and there was a dearth of subject matter that they were looking for. They called for specific subject, Native American, the fair. I think there were a couple other choices. So I sent them, after that or right before that, I sent them an example of how Kent does their Signal Box calls. They pick the artist by sample works, and then they commission the artist to do a design for a certain box, and they can, tell you what subject matters they want you to pick from or even give you a specific one. So I'm hoping they do it that way next year. That way the artists don't create, art that only 1 out of 20 gets selected, and the artist has spent time, creating a specific thing for the fair or Native American, and this way, also
30 seconds.
Thank you. The Arts Commission gets more what they're looking for, and the artists also don't they can submit existing work as samples. They don't have to create a new piece of work that may or may not get selected. So anyways, mostly just thank you for continuing to support the arts in Puyallup. Thanks.
Thank you, Kelly. Appreciate those comments. Finally, we have Paul Romich. And keep this in mind, if you did not fill out one of these and would like to make comments, feel free to do so. I just, however, do it in order that I receive these. But afterwards, I do allow public comments, even if you haven't filled one of these out. But welcome, Mr. Romich.
Thank you, Mayor Castema. Paul Romich, District 1. I just want to say thanks to council for continuing to support CERT. My wife is currently going through that program right now, and she'll be wrapping up tomorrow evening with her final class, and she's loved it. So continue to support that. We need, it's a good way to build a, community and just, scale up our local residents. Speaking of emergency response, we have Halloween coming up. That is a very critical day because it is the day where we have statistically significant more amount of kid deaths by cars than any other day in the year. So just heads up, everyone, slow down on the roads. Come on, it's dark out early, people will be out and about, and they might not be on the sidewalk, and that's okay. Just slow down and pay attention out there. And then, I think I'll save the rest of my stuff for the public hearings tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Romich. Appreciate that. Does anyone else would like to come forward and make any comments? Let me just add my comment here that Mr. Hopkins, you talked about ways to get more involvement. We certainly are willing and would like to encourage people to come forward with any methods to do that. And I appreciate your comments, and I've taken those to heart. With that, now we're going to go to the section on proclamation that I skipped over, and I'm very proud to give this proclamation. It is regarding Stormwater Awareness Week, something that, believe it or not, is very unique to Puyallup. And let me go ahead and read the proclamation. Whereas stormwater comes from precipitation that falls on hard surfaces and does not soak into the ground, becoming runoff. Runoff becomes polluted with tire wear particles, vehicle fluids, fertilizers, pesticides, bacteria, sediment, litter, pet waste, etc. as it runs along the roads, sidewalks, parking lots, roofs, and lawns. And whereas runoff flows into the storm sewer that eventually flows untreated into waterways, rivers, streams, lakes, and oceans in the Puget Sound. And whereas plants and soil filter water and improve water quality, on-site improvements such as porous pavement, stormwater ponds, native plants, rain gardens, and bioswales, and other best management practices help with pollution prevention and treatment in stormwater runoff. And whereas the Washington State Stormwater Center, located at the Washington State University Research and Extension Center in Puyallup, is a leader in developing technology to prevent and mitigate stormwater discharge. And whereas by focusing attention on pollution prevention in stormwater runoff, Washington State will continue to meet the challenges associated with polluted runoff. Whereas Stormwater Awareness Week is an opportunity for local government, industry, and environmental organizations to recognize the potential of stormwater pollution prevention within our rivers, lakes, streams, and other water bodies. Now, therefore, the City of Puyallup recognizes the week of November 9th through the 16th, 2024 as Stormwater Awareness Week. I, witness thereof, the Mayor, Jim Castema, have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Puyallup to make this proclamation official. With that, could we have Lori Larson-Pugh from the Washington Stormwater Center please come forward for a few words and to accept the proclamation?
Dan told me I didn't have to speak, but I want to thank the mayor,
Good seeing you.
thank you, and the city council for supporting the Stormwater Center.
Oh, get a picture together. Didn't want to interrupt you there.
We would like to thank the mayor and the city council for supporting this Stormwater Week, which we plan on making an annual event and helping us bring awareness of stormwater and how people can make a difference with small actions in their community. Thank you.
Thank you. This is actually quite a big asset to our community. Washington State University has a research extension center, which is, I believe, the oldest research extension center for Washington State University right here in Puyallup. And it certainly has been a fixture. There's probably, I don't know, well over 100 researchers there, a very vital part of this community. But it is the center for stormwater technology for the entire state and has done things that have made it nationally recognized too. So very, very important, especially when we deal with the habitat for orcas, with salmon. All of these things are really affected by stormwater runoff in the Puget Sound area, and we need ways to mitigate and to prevent that. And it's done right here in Puyallup, so it's fantastic. So with that, we're going to move on to number 5, the consent agenda. The consent agenda is where we have a list of items that are non-controversial, and we go ahead and we make one motion to accept all of those. Having said that, is there any item on the consent agenda that a member would like to have set aside for discussion at a later point? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I make a motion.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, let's move on to number 6, a public hearing. And this is the first reading of an ordinance for the formation of a transportation benefit district. And if we could have Talika Makaharia come forward, and she will explain that. We've already had I believe, a study session on this before, but now let's go into more detail of the actual ordinance itself. So with that, Talika, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Castema, council members. Tulika Makaharia, Performance Management Analyst. This evening, Finance Director Lopez and I will have a very brief and quick few slides for you to talk about an overview of what transportation benefit districts are, estimated revenues. Following that, council will conduct a public hearing and then first reading of an ordinance to form a transportation benefit district. So RCW 3673 authorizes cities and counties to form an independent taxing district called Transportation Benefit District. These TBDs raise funds usually through sales tax or vehicle license fees to fund transportation improvements within the district. This creates a designated fund for transportation-related related expenses, so that money can only be used for transportation, construction, improvements, maintenance, operations. Of the two most popular used funding sources, staff recommends a sales tax of 0.1%, which can be imposed through a vote of the council tonight. Vote of the council, not tonight, I apologize. And that equates to $1 on every $1,000 spent. And this is a 10-year tax. At the end of 10 years, council may renew with a vote if required. The other option, which staff is not recommending, is the vehicle license fees, which can be up to $40 after 2 years, also by vote of council. So just a quick look at what the timeline looks like for forming and funding TBD this year. So we've had 2 presentations, an informational one at the budget session. Tonight is the public hearing and the first reading of the ordinance. Should this move forward, there will be a second reading of the ordinance on November 12th. The TBD is created. At that point, the council then functions as a separate entity, which is the TBD board. And at the November 19th meeting, at the TBD board meeting, the council can fund the Transportation Benefit District through a resolution. And I will hand it to Barbara now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Barbara Lopez, Finance Director. I was going to talk a little bit about the objectives and the estimated revenues that would come from the Transportation Benefit District. So one of the primary objectives of this is to create a dedicated funding source for street operations and maintenance, so that those functions do not need to rely solely on the general fund revenue that has paid for those functions in the past. So in turn, it reduces the general fund obligations for street operations and maintenance, and therefore kind of helps to create a positive offset to our general fund imbalanced budget by generating about $3 million in additional revenue year over year. So the way that translates a little bit more into the estimated revenues, again, it's the 0.1% sales tax. This option is recommended because it's broader based than the vehicle license fees. Better aligns with the users of our street infrastructure. The folks driving into Puyallup to purchase in Puyallup are helping to pay for those streets. As previously mentioned, that equates to $1 on a $1,000 purchase. This would require a 75-day notice to the Department of Revenue, so we are anticipating, should this be adopted, that April 1st, 2025 would be the effective date of it. The estimated annual revenues, again, are $3 million because it would not be in effect until April. The first year would be $2.25 million is estimated. Again, it helps to balance the 25-26 biennial budget by providing funding, dedicated funding for a portion of the street costs currently paid by the general fund. These are operations and maintenance costs, staffing, electricity for street lights, those sorts of things. And then in turn, those dollars that are freed up can be reallocated to other core services. On the right-hand side of the slide, it just shows the original out-of-fund balance of the general fund that we started out $3.4 and $3.9 million respectively for each of the years. It also still shows that we removed some transfers to certain things that we are temporarily suspending, which would be things like radio replacement equipment, our LEF 1 and our fire pension. All of those items have plenty of fund balance to at least temporarily remove those for this biennium. The public safety building project, all of those items, the revenues that were approved by council, and there were some expenditure cuts. The funding sources did exceed expected costs for those first couple of years, so that helps balance the budget. And then the sales tax, the 0.1% sales tax. There is a remaining amount left in the budget that could be used for one-time purposes, whether it's towards streets or something else. It is freed up general fund dollars, so council can make a decision on that at some point in the future. And I believe that is it.
Are there any questions by council members? Barbara, I know that last time we discussed this at our study session, Councilmember Johnson, I think, was inquiring about the priorities that people have for transportation, and you had a slide at that time that did identify what people prioritized in transportation. Does that sound familiar?
It does sound familiar, but I'm guessing that Talika would be much more knowledgeable about that.
Okay.
That came from the customer or the?
I'm only bringing it up
Okay.
because when I do understand that we're going to have roughly $500,000 and $700,000, and the question I have is whether we can take those funds and kind of, start this transportation benefit district by, in fact, putting those allocations, at least for the 2-year period, into those priority item transportation projects.
Council could absolutely choose to do that.
Okay, all right. Any questions? Councilmember Dorr.
Yes, I just have one question. Talika, I think it was Talika. When you said that, sorry, I'm looking for the Transportation Benefit District Board meeting, is this similar to when we do utility rates and things? We still do it within this meeting, or is there actually a separate meeting?
So my understanding is, I'm looking at Joe, it will be on the same date, but because we are not assuming, council will not be assuming the district this year, because we want to get this done by the end of the year. So it will be a separate meeting, same.
The way functionally it will work is we will adjourn the council meeting for a period of time. We will call the Transportation Benefit Board meeting into session. You will sit as the Transportation Benefit District Board and make the decisions for the board, and then you will end that meeting and resume the council meeting for other business. That's the functional way that it will happen, but should all happen within a single council meeting time period.
Okay, thank you.
And this is only until the council can assume the meeting at a later date, assume the board at a later date, and then we won't need to do this.
Any further comments? Hearing none, we're now going to open a public hearing for citizen comments that deal with this particular issue, and I'll go ahead and do that right now. With that, if any citizen would like to come forward and comment on the Transportation Benefit District, would be greatly appreciated. So please just come forward. And just so I check, Paul, thanks for being here, Paul Romich. But just with the clerk, 2 minutes or 3 minutes?
2 minutes.
Okay. Sorry, there's just different guidelines per aspects of this. With that, proceed.
Thank you, Mayor Kasma. Paul Romich, District 1. I'm here to speak in support of the formation of the Transportation Benefit District. Really, why do we need it? It's pretty clear. We have aging signals, we have aging roads, and quite frankly, the design of them in general is subpar. We are lacking sidewalks and other infrastructure for active transportation. And so how do we get here? Well, reliance on sales tax is always fickle, and becoming more reliant on sales tax isn't, a great solution. However, it's probably the best one to go forward and actually make progress on our problem. And in addition, 20 years ago we had a little citizens initiative come through that really axed municipal budget funding from property tax perspective. So it's what our option is really. And so if we want to see safety improvements, if we want to see traffic improvements, if we want to see sidewalk connectivity throughout the city over the next 20 years, it's good that we secure the funding and a funding source for those improvements. And something I do challenge council to do is how do we make these improvements while improving the status quo, not just redoing what we already have, but making it better, right? I mentioned sidewalks, but there's ample room in our right-of-way for bike lanes in many cases, right? So that's something I do challenge council to, put money towards, because if we can move more people, we'll have less traffic. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Romich. Appreciate those comments. I look forward to any kind of suggestions you have, too. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward regarding this ordinance? If not, the mayor would like to entertain a motion to approve the first reading of the ordinance for the formation of the Transportation Benefit District.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? Okay, with that, just let me check with the clerk. On first reading, there's no need for voice vote. Okay? Excellent. We're now going to move on to 6B, public hearing regarding revenue sources, including property taxes, for the 2025-2026 biennial budget. And our finance director, Barbara, you're back at the helm there. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a brief presentation to kind of lay the groundwork for the public hearing. So I wanted to show you kind of where we are in the budget process timeline. So back in June, we were in front of you with our revenue and expense projections. We sat through 3 nights of budget study sessions in October Tonight, October 29th, we are doing the public hearings on both the revenues, property tax levy, and the preliminary budget. And then upcoming activities are the first reading and second readings of those particular ordinances. So the action needing tonight is just the public hearing on revenue sources, including property taxes. In past years, we've done the public hearing and the first readings, but we've split those out this year. So tonight is simply the public hearing. Just a quick slide on our citywide revenues for the biennium, total $312 million. Some of the major revenue sources are taxes, as you would imagine. Property taxes are about $22 million. Sales tax is just over $68 million. The sales tax and the property tax and all of the revenues on here do actually include everything that was in the preliminary budget, the transportation benefit district, and then the items for the public safety building. And charges for services, that's another large category. A lot of those are utility fees. So we operate our own utilities, and those are the fees that come in. Revenues in the preliminary budget. So in the general fund, it was those core revenues that were consistent with the forecast that we brought to you back in June. The approved revenues to help fund the public safety building project, and then the proposed transportation benefit district, the 0.1% sales tax. That is all included in those numbers I just presented. For the utility funds, there will be new rates that go into effect February 1st. Those are based on the construction cost index that was published in June. So that was 1.5% for 2025, and we're estimating another 1.5 for 26. And then the catch-up provisions that were approved in the utility rate study. Those are all included in this preliminary budget. The property tax levy itself, the preliminary calculations for the levy are just over $11.2 million. The way that gets calculated is we start with this year's levy, which was just shy of $10 million. Pierce County lets us know what new construction and administrative refunds and all the activities that they've done with our property taxes over the year, which adds about $400,000 to that. It does include the 1% allowable increase, and then the use of bank capacity of $730,000 that is connected with the public safety building. That's how we derive the preliminary levy amount. The way that translates then to a median, what would that cost for Puyallup's property tax on a median value home? According to Pierce County, the median value home as of August of this year is just over $525,000. And at this levy amount, the estimated cost on that median value home is $566 for the year. 26 is on there as a forecast. Obviously, we will be back next year this time to do the actual levy for 2026. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Barbara. Could you go back to the previous slide, please?
The property tax?
Yeah, well, just
okay.
Right here is fine. Is there any questions that anyone has regarding this before we open to public comments? Now, just so I logistically understand this, you're not looking for a motion this evening. We'll just have a public hearing on this, correct?
Correct. We will do, we plan on bringing back first reading on November 19th.
Excellent. Okay. And then you'd be looking at a final passage for this November
the 26th, I believe, is the following meeting.
So we have time to examine this. I do want to point out to anyone who's, well, people in the audience here, and then also those people who are watching this, that of your property tax bill, about 11% of that goes to the city of Puyallup. And we're very proud of the fact that in the last 7 years, I think we've only increased that portion over that entire period about 4.5%. And I did some calculation on the back of a napkin, and the inflation rate was roughly 28 to 30% during that same time. Right. So we have been trying to keep our budget as conservative as we can. This does include a provision where we take a 1% increase on the levy, which is something that's allowable through an initiative process. So that may not keep up with inflation, but nevertheless helps us, at least a little bit to address those big issues of inflation, for example. So I just wanted to point that out to everyone. So with that, if there's no questions, we'll go straight into public hearing. With that, I'm going to open it up. If there is a citizen or citizens who would like to come forward, please do so. Public hearing is open. Mr. Romich, please come forward. If you'd like, you can just stay there for the next bill, too. I'm just kidding.
I know.
Hey, take a seat in the front row.
I know, I should have sat closer.
No, it's good to hear from you. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mayor Casima. Paul Romich, District 1. Just speaking in support of this as well. A lot of the challenges that council faces today, they're not, your burden to bear entirely from decisions that you made. But you got shouldered with the decisions to make due to a variety of reasons of, past councils, past generations. Best way to keep moving forward and growing is to continue to build our infrastructure out. This property tax levy does enable us to do a lot of cool things here. So let's do it. Thank you, Paul Romich.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to come forward? If not, we'll close the public hearing on the property taxes for 2025-2026 biennial budget. And now we're going to move on to 6C, public hearing on the proposed 2025-2026 biennial budget. We had just previously discussed the actual taxes, the revenue sources. Now we're going to discuss the expenditures, the budget. So with that, Finance Director Barbara Lopez, again, you're the person.
Thank you again. I'm just wrong one. Waiting for the presentation to come up. But what I can say is, again, it's a brief presentation prior to just the public hearing tonight. We're not doing first reading of the budget. We will bring that back to you on November 19th as well. Perfect. Thank you, Emmett. Again, public hearing tonight on the 25-26 biennial budget. Just to lay a little bit of the foundation, you've already seen this before, but you never know who might be new in the audience. So the last 3+ years of high inflation have actually left some really long-lasting effects on our budget. And that's in two big categories. So our sales tax revenues that we do have, they're about 50% of the resources that we use in the general fund budget. Prior to 2020, those revenues increased an average of 4% per year. It was a pretty good growth. It helped keep up with things that were, your normal average inflation. That growth slowed to 2.2% in 2022, and then it shifted to a reduction of 3.4% in 23, and a projected 2.8, maybe 3% reduction in 2024. So it's gone from growing each year to it's been shrinking the last couple of years. The 2024 projected revenues are nearly $1.7 million less than what we collected in 2022. So that has left an lasting impact on our budget. The other side are all of the expenditures. Inflation really, just as with our own personal, finances, salaries and wages, CPI has been higher than normal. Benefits, we have medical claims costs that have been driving a couple of increases, one in 23, and then there's included in the budget for 25 and 26 are additional increases. The city's property and liability insurance has gone up a lot over the last 4 years. It's up just even $2 million since 2022. That's a 140% increase. It's a huge increase. So just as in your home life, the cost of everything that we use to provide those services has increased. The chart down below just is to show, so our revenues over the 4-year period from 2021 through 2024 grew by about $1.3 million, and which is about 2.8%, but our expenses grew by $10.8 million, or almost 25%. So those are the impacts that we've had and are evident in this 25-26 budget. So we are required by law to pass a budget that balances, so we could not bring forward one that didn't. Just a little bit about how we balanced that. The revenue projections that were presented to council in June, that's where we got our baseline revenues. I mean, the indicators really didn't change for that. And then in the baseline budget for the general fund, our goal was the absolute minimum expenses that we could get away with to maintain our core services at or near the current level. So those were the two things that fed into the baseline budget. Out of that came an out of balance of $3.4 million in 2025 and almost $4 million in 2026. Looking at the revenues for 25, they're 1/10% more than what was in 2024, but the expense increases are 3.9%. So again, we've still got that out of balance of what we've been seeing for the last 3 years. The primary factors on that were we do rely heavily on sales tax revenues. Again, it's 50% of our general fund revenues, and they can be negatively affected by the current economic conditions just like everything else can, and it has been. And then the 3+ years of cumulative across the board increases in everything. So our balancing strategies were to remove some of those transfers that we talked about earlier, the radio replacement, our LAP 1 benefits and fire pension, and use their fund balances in those respective funds instead. The impacts of the public safety building project added a little bit, and then the transportation benefit district. Again, there's a bit of a remaining amount that council can choose how they would like to use that. If nothing is allocated today or this budget process, it will still be there to be allocated down the road. So the citywide expenditures for this particular budget total $312.7 million. I've got the kind of the breakdown by the departments. Just to kind of give you a scale of things, you know, Public Works also includes our utilities, so that's not just the general fund. This is actually citywide. And then the police department, human resources, you know, just all of our different departments contributing to that $312.7 million. What is not included in these numbers are the council-initiated changes from the preliminary budget, those things that we talked about at the budget study sessions. It's just not included in these particular numbers. We are working on finalizing numbers. I believe that I've got some of the latest numbers to be able to put into the ordinance to bring to you at first reading. So unless told otherwise tonight or in between times, that is the intention, is to put those in for first reading. And that's the signal box wraps, the downtown light poles on Stewart and a couple of other places, and then the cross street lighting. I know that there's a technical term for it, but I can't remember what it is.
Barbara, hold on. Oh,
yes.
I guess we're ready for questions.
Yes.
That was where the slide was. Very timely. Councilmember Whitting.
Just looking at this is a public meeting. Should I be directing my questions now, or
No, please, go ahead with Barbara, and then what we'll have is, after you ask questions, I think we should have plenty of opportunities for questions. So what we'll do is open it up for questions, then we'll have a public hearing, and then if you have any further questions, we'll continue with it. So please proceed.
Yeah, my question, I was just looking at those transfers that you're removing this year. So looking forward to 2027, 2028, does that represent a hole that we're going to have to fill later?
Some of it to a certain extent. So like with the Left One benefits and the fire pension, the city is still on the hook for whatever those costs are. I don't think that we'll have to address it immediately in 27. We could start to phase some things back in at that point.
Thank you.
That's an excellent question. In fact, it was along the lines I was going to ask about the sustainability. Always very concerned about, if you don't mind, could you explain the budgeting process? I know you've done it ad nauseum, many, many times, but I think it's important that the people of Puyallup understand how we carry forward with a budget, how we plan for the next biennial budget. Could you please explain that?
Yes, so the budget stability policy starts with the revenues that we forecast for the next year. It's a very conservative approach. Basically, what the policy says is go look at the prior full 2 years. So we're in 24, so we would be looking at 22 and 23 because those are the full years of revenues. Whichever one is the least, take that moving into the new budget for 2025 so that we can be very conservative in what those revenues are. Sales tax is a little different. In the past, the policy says to add 3% each year as you're moving it forward. So say 2023 was the lowest year. You add 3% to get to 24 and then another 3% to get to 25. However, that didn't pan out well for this budget. It seemed it was too excessive given what we're seeing. But that's how the policy is trying to have us be very conservative with what we expect for revenues to try to help make sure that we can cover our core services. So once we figured out what those revenues are that are available, Tier 1 first goes towards funding core services. Those are the services to the community, the police, the streets, the support services for them, to just fund those core things so that we can provide our services to the community. Tier 2 are some capital items, such as putting money towards replacing vehicles, or putting money towards replacing computer equipment and things like that. So those sorts of things. So it's only if Tier 1 is covered do you get the Tier 2. And then Tier 3 happens during the course of the year if we collect more money in revenues than what we needed to cover our Tier 1 and our Tier 2 costs. That ends up being one-time money that we call Tier 3, and that gets set aside in budget stability reserves for council to allocate to one-time items. In a lot of situations, that policy works really well. The inflation over the last 3 years has been a challenge for that policy to keep up with.
Okay, thank you. And also, I do want to make the public aware that if a new position is added, it comes before the council.
Correct.
And we will always approve. And we have approximately about 320 employees. Is that correct?
I believe that's ballpark close. Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. I'm going to call the chief up here for a second. Barbara, you might be here as well, but my question starts with the chief. So my question is also on these transfers.
Excuse me. Scott Engel, our police chief. Just want to identify.
Thank you, Mayor.
I think everybody knows you, but I want to be kind of formal about this. Proceed.
So my question is on the radio replacements. I know that we budget 10 radios a year. I don't know what the fund balance is in that, but I also know, and I don't really understand exactly what the replacement policy is, as opposed whether it is when they break, at what point is it that we decide we're going to replace them. But what I'm wondering is, because we have this 566, I'm assuming that's not $566, thousands. My understanding is Tacoma is putting together a regional proposal for all the jurisdictions to get the radios at a reduced rate. And so I'm wondering if that has been talked about, and looked at to see, since we do have some money here, what is the discount rate that they're going to get, as opposed to us paying for it individually 10 at a time? Because I thought that it was like 250 radios or something. Was the max. If they could get to that rate, we got a discount. So I don't know if you can help me understand that policy or what we're doing, and would we be replacing? If we were not reducing these funds for the radio replacement, would we be purchasing more radios in that group purchase?
Lots of questions there, and I think I have them here, so I'll go through them as I heard them, but if I miss one, let me know. So starting first with the radio replacement policy, the policy had been that when the radio was at end of life, which was basically determined by the manufacturer, that we were rotating radios out. We went away from that a couple of years ago based on the advice and guidance of our radio service provider, who said that really isn't a defined time anymore, that radios will continue to function after the manufacturer says that they go out of date. It's certainly a point where the manufacturer says that they're no longer supporting replacement or repair of the radio. So what we've gone to, which is currently in place today, is that when the radio breaks, that is when we'll replace a radio. We try to keep spare radios, if you will, on the shelf to handle those situations where a radio might break. It is unusual to have a radio go down. It does happen, but that's not something. I don't want council to think that that happens every day, or frankly the public to think that happens every day. It is a rare occurrence. To the question about the global purchase that's happening here in Pierce County, we are participating in that here this month. We are going to purchase 10 radios as part of that regional purchase. And Barbara might have to help me out. I'm a little fuzzy tonight. I think that's 43%, if I remember right. 37%, somewhere in that neighborhood, 37%. It's substantial savings for us. And so we are purchasing 10 radios to replace some of our oldest radios in our radio fleet, and also to put some radios on the shelf that aren't quite as old but can be used as backup radios. So in a year, for us, we may have 1 or 2 radios break. Sometimes they can be repaired and sometimes they may not. We are watching the age of our radios in general, but again, we've gone really away from that hard and fast, this is end of life, because our radio service provider has said it's really when the radio breaks. So I hope that answers all the questions in there.
It does, except for that we're doing this for 2 years. So do you think that those 10 radios that you're purchasing are going, I know you can't.
I need to clarify something. So for radio replacements, there is about $600,000 in a fund balance. So this budget does include $80,000 per year to be able to still continue to replace radios using that fund balance. So it's $160,000 over the biennium out of that $600,000 that is included in the budget, so that they can do radio replacements over the next couple of years.
Okay, and so I don't know what is the cost per radio? I know that was fluctuating between
$6,000 and $8,000, and that over a 2-year biennium is absolutely sufficient for us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Dorr. Appreciate that question. If there are no further questions, I will go ahead and we're going to now go into citizens' comment for the 2025-2026 biennial budget. So with that, would any citizen like to come forward and comment regarding this? Well, surprise, surprise. Paul Romich.
Yeah, I should have sat closer up. That was my bad. Paul Romich, District 1. Thank you, Mayor Castamo. We run a really tight ship here, and it works out well. We have excellent staff, they're doing a great job to keep costs down. I think there's some great ideas from, council initiated ideas with the overhead street lighting downtown. I think that's a great way we can expand, especially when it gets dark so early. Great way to keep, people downtown, keep it lively, even when it gets dark early. and that translates to more sales tax dollars, right? So that's like a revenue increasing move, right? An investment in that, right? Staff's doing a great job, keeping costs down. So, it's also up to you to help increase those revenues a bit as well, right? I'm going to go into the commercial nodes and other things in the comp plan, right? Helping to increase those revenues makes their job easier, means they have to cut less corners when it comes to making budget decisions, right? When we're able to scale up those revenues in a smart and organic way. So, overall, I think it's a great idea. I think Mayor Castema had a good point with, leveraging some of that excess funding to get a kickstart on our, some of our outstanding transportation projects. I support that idea as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate that very much. With that, I'm going to, if there's no further comment, I'm going to close the public hearing. Having said that, Councilmember Whitting, I did say that if there's any further questions, there'll be no public comment further. But however, if you have a question or anyone else, please feel free to ask it. If not, we'll move on to the city manager's reports, and then each council member will provide a report. Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I know that we all received a memo from the city manager on council-initiated items that we don't have to make a decision today, but it will help them bring back an ordinance that actually reflects our desires. So I'm not clear now that we have some numbers. So I had proposed the polls on West and East Stewart with significant input from some of the business owners back, in that area. And it looks like that cost range is $23,000 to $35,000. And then I believe it was Deputy Mayor King that proposed 5th Street Southwest, 7th Avenue Southwest, 3rd Street Southeast, and 7th Avenue Southwest. So I don't know. I'm not quite sure. Where's Ken? Can I ask a question quickly?
Ken Davies. Okay, Ken, our Public Works Director, please go ahead.
Ken Davies, Public Works Director. Sorry, what was your question?
So, I was waiting for you to get here before I asked it. So when it's saying depending on how many poles can be installed, what is the factor that we don't know?
Oh, it's just the quantity. So if we're looking at East Stewart, we want to lay them out. So we thought 4. So it's the lower range if it's 4. But if we increase, it's just a per unit cost. So straight arithmetic, really. Okay, but so it's whatever council wants, and yes. The same thing on these other ones is 8 poles. So what is your recommendation? Is it on both of these 2 items? Are you recommending the lower end? Are you? I think on the the 4th, the King, they're recommending 4 at 5th and 7th, and then at Bypass and 7th also 4. Okay, so total of 8, and then. Then our initial recommendation for East Stewart additional is 4, is what we were looking at. But we didn't lay them out, yet, so we would bring back, something for you to take a look at. Okay. So I am in support of both of those. I think that it's important for all the reasons that are laid out in the budget study session. The cross-street lighting I love, but I'm concerned about the price, and I wish Councilmember Johnson was here. I would like council to possibly entertain, I asked the city manager today, we don't have this type of lighting in our plans for the Meeker Festival Street. So maybe with the fact that we don't have, it's $575,000 to $650,000 per city block, maybe we look at using it to activate the Meeker Festival Street. But I do know that staff would appreciate it if we had if they had some direction on how to move forward. So
Mr. Mayor, I'll leave that up to you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I propose that what we do is that now we have, until the first reading, we have what, how many weeks? 2? Or 2 weeks. Okay, during that time, I think all council requests need to be brought forward to Barbara. We need to work on those and get the actual numbers. And then when we do the first reading, you can either do it at that time or second reading. I think we actually vote on to add, whether we add those amendments to the budget at that time. That make sense? That would seem to be very clean. That way we can work on these, and rather than saying we put them all in the budget, not knowing how that will deal with the end balance, what we received this evening tells us really where that end balance is, and then we vote on it at that time with all of the various options that council member would request at one time.
And yeah, no, I understand that. Like I said, the staff had the email we received said if we were able to give them some direction tonight, that would be appreciated. But I'm fine with waiting.
Okay, and also, if I could just finally add to that, if it appears as if that would get us into the red category instead of the black category, in other words, in debt, then we will, at that time, look at some modifications if necessary.
I think they're all LTAC.
Are they all LTAC? Okay. Well, nevertheless, those will require us at that time. And I say that because I would like members, if really realize that what we had discussed before is not definitive. There can be additional items. If over the next 2 weeks you come up with additional ideas, please bring those forward. And then we'll look at those in the entire budget conversation. I don't want it to do anything limiting at this point. I prefer as many different ideas as we can put forward. So if there are no further questions, we're now going to thank you very much, by the way. Excellent presentation. Appreciate that. Ken, I think you're off the hook. Okay. And with that, let's move on to the city manager's report.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. So at your next meeting on November 12th will be the second reading of the ordinance establishing the Transportation Benefit District. And then assuming if council did approve that, then we will start to move into the first readings of all the ordinances adopting the budget and the property tax levy and then the funding for the Transportation Benefit District. Next week, you do not have a meeting. It's November 4th, Election Day, so there will be no meeting next week. The following week is November 12th. There is a meeting. I do want to call your attention to an event here at City Hall before the meeting at 5:30 p.m. here in the council lobby. There will be a dedication ceremony for Lieutenant Candle, Victor Candle, who was awarded the Medal of Honor many years ago, and so there will be a ceremony there naming it after Lieutenant Candle. And then other items on your November 12th meeting include, in addition to the second reading of the Transportation Benefit District, there will also be second reading of the ordinance pertaining to parking in downtown, parking time zones, and there will be a presentation on the comprehensive plan matter. You've heard a fair amount on the housing and that component of it, but there's various other elements within the comprehensive plan that have not come before you yet, and so those items will be coming before you for your discussion. And that's the extent of my report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I'll go a little bit out of the usual order here. Councilmember Whitting.
The process of our government is coming to a critical time period. We've got that election coming up next week. Those of us that sit on this dais are not up for election this year. We're in the off-year elections, but there's a lot of important positions up for election this coming year. I encourage everyone to vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate those words. Councilmember Dorr.
I will just echo that and be done.
Councilmember Gilliam.
Thank you, Mayor Castema. I'm going to keep my comments short. If you're not aware, I hope you are choosing to listen. Puyallup is this Thursday from 3 to 6 p.m. in downtown Puyallup. So bring your little ones all dressed up and visit the different businesses handing out candy. First time ever this year in the Puyallup Library, we have a sensory room for students or young people that are sensitive. And there's a little trick-or-treat space inside the Puyallup Library for those students. So please bring your loved ones and come hang out in downtown Puyallup.
Thank you. Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would like to thank our colleague, Councilmember Whitting, for visiting with me and inquiring about some of my comments that I made related to the proposed updated parking ordinance. Appreciate his interest in wanting to understand the issue better. I have not heard anything else about how the ordinance is developing otherwise. So I look forward to the presentation in 2 weeks. And yes, as others have alluded to, 1 week from today is election day. It will be the 5th presidential race that I have been able to vote in since turning 18. So you can do the math. Hopefully I did the math correctly. And I often think about a quote by Benjamin Franklin that was a response to a woman who asked him after the Constitutional Convention, "Well, doctor, what have we got? A republic or a monarchy?" And Benjamin Franklin said, "A republic, if you can keep it." Thank you very much.
Thank you for those comments. Deputy Mayor King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I echo Councilmember Gilliam's promotion of the Puyallup and Puyallup. Make sure you bring out your kids if you're looking to volunteer. You can reach out to the Puyallup Kiwanis Club. I'm sure they'll be excited to use your warm body to help keep the kids out there on the streets safe in our downtown. Always a great organization and being able to serve throughout our community. I also echo my colleagues. Make sure you get out and vote and do your due diligence. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Well, I too would like to encourage people to get out and vote. There's kind of an interesting statistic regarding voting. Generally, people say that whatever your age is the percentage of voters your age who vote. For example, if you are 18, well, 18% of 18-year-olds vote, and then it moves up the line from there. Of course, very leaning towards seniors voting, being the ones that would vote the most, because that would be of the 70-year-olds, 70% of them vote. And that tends to be the kind of the general rule. Certainly in Washington State, we would like people to get out, everyone, to get out and express how they feel about their government, who they want their leaders to be. I'm very proud of the leaders that we have on the dais here representing Puyallup, and I think that they are very representative of Puyallup. Boy, we have people going back 3-4 generations, and I think that instills a tremendous amount of confidence the public has in the council, and I want to thank all of you for that. And I think that it's the same approach we take on the national level and any level. Our vote counts. We have to make our voice known. It is really the significant way that we all can do that and all be part of the solution that we want. And whatever we want out there, the vote is really the pivotal issue. So I do encourage people to do that. The upcoming month of November is going to be very significant for the city of Puyallup in that that's when our budget is going to happen. The probably most important document we're going to be passing up here is that budget. It identifies our priorities. It identifies so many aspects of what we feel we need for the city of Puyallup are in that vote. So again, I encourage everyone here, if there's some modifications you want to make, let's bring them forward. We'll try to integrate those into the budget, but this is the big opportunity to do that. We'll also be hearing more about the comprehensive plan, which will have significant impact on the people of Puyallup. As many of you know, the state legislature has, I think, put in place some very onerous restrictions or requirements on the city of Puyallup that could dramatically impact our neighborhoods. So this next, month of November primarily is going to be very, very significant, and I don't want to say historic, but it's going to be certainly something that we have to give a tremendous amount of attention towards. So with that, no further comments I have to make. I will see all of you in 2 weeks' time. And again, I would like to echo certainly the sentiment dealing with safety. When our kids are out there, please be careful, public, of kids trick-or-treating. They still do that in all of our neighborhoods. And just keep special eye out for them so we can make it a safe holiday. With that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.